want to share two statistics with you, both from the same Deloitte report, both telling the same story, but from two very different angles. At the organizational level, 86% of companies say leadership development is a top priority, but only 13% feel they actually do it well. Then at the individual level, over 1/3 of managers say they feel unprepared for the people management and the leadership aspects of their roles. Oh, by the way, 40%, 40%, say that their mental health has declined since taking on a leadership position. I mean, think about what those numbers mean. Organizations are investing in something they admit to failing at. And the leaders on the receiving end of that failure, they're not just underperforming. They're struggling. Personally, quietly, often alone. See, that gap, the gap between organizational intention and individual reality, is what today's episode is all about. And we're going to help you close it. Welcome back to the Frontline Leadership Podcast, where we help frontline leaders become professional leaders that transform business bottom lines in the process. I'm your host, Craig Coyle, former Apache helicopter pilot, aerospace leader, and founder of Operation Lead. This is episode 10, the culminating episode of our podcast launch series. And today we are bringing it all together. 9 episodes in the making. So let's dive in. Up to this point, we've covered quite a bit of ground. 9 episodes. We've talked about why frontline leaders fail, what it actually means to lead like a professional, and how flight school, pre-flight, and progression each play a distinct role in developing the kind of leaders that your organization needs. The kind of leaders who create the culture you've envisioned. Culture that promotes loyalty, purpose, and results. We've talked through the realities and we've taught each component separately. But there's one critical thing that we haven't done yet. And today, we show what happens when these components all work together. Rather, we highlight why they have to work together, why they work in relationship with one another. Before we get into that picture, I do want to acknowledge something. I know that if you're listening to this, you probably aren't just intellectually curious about leadership or leader development. You're likely living the consequences of either not having it or it not producing its intended results in the world that you live in. And maybe that's you, the frontline supervisor who is handed a team and a title and told to go figure it out. I'm sure you genuinely want to do right by your people, but you probably go home most nights exhausted and quietly wondering if you're actually cut out for this role or leadership in general. Or maybe you're the senior leader who keeps showing up, keeps pushing, and just can't understand why the needle just won't move, no matter how hard you work. You're not burnt out because you're weak. You're not burnt out because you're not leadership material. You're burnt out because you've been carrying the weight that a system is supposed to carry for you. This episode is for both of you because you're both victims of the same problem. So before we get in too deep, let's start with what we know to be true about this problem. Here's what the absence of a system looks like in practice. Supervisors get promoted because they were great at the job and then left to figure out leadership on their own. Training programs launch with energy, but they fade within weeks. Initiatives get announced, they gain some traction, and then culture inevitably, quietly drifts back to baseline. And senior leaders who should be building the organization, driving it forward, end up spending most of their time driving results with brute force and firefighting problems that should have been solved 3 levels below them. Now, none of this is random. It's predictable. It's what happens in the absence of leadership infrastructure. Believe it or not, the word chaos actually originated from Greek mythology, where it represents this idea of a formless, disorganized matter that existed before the creation of the ordered universe. See, most organizations aren't struggling because of bad people. They're struggling because there is nothing beneath their leaders. There's no system holding them up, developing them, pulling them forward, ordering their universe. Here's the question I want to leave you sitting with before we go any further in this episode. What if the chaos you're managing every single day isn't a people problem, but a system problem in disguise? I've had to wrestle with this question before, and I know it's important to because I've lived on both sides of it. When I was flying Apache helicopters in the Army, I was being developed constantly. I mean, we had clear skill tiers to advance through, recurring evaluations, more than I'd like to admit. Instructor pilots were embedded throughout my career, whose specific job was to make me better, regardless of at what stage in my journey I was. And I had a cohort of fellow aviators navigating the same progression alongside me. Now, I didn't think of it as a development program. It was just how things worked. It was the environment that I operated in, the environment we executed our mission within. It's just how we worked and how we lived. Then I transitioned out of the military and I stepped into the civilian world. And for the first time, I immediately felt the absence of that infrastructure. No clear progression path. Mentorship was accidental or informal, if it existed at all. Peer community was happenstance at best. And I watched what that absence did to me, but also to the leaders and really the workforce that existed around me. People who are talented, committed, genuinely trying, truly wanted to do a good job, were struggling not because they lacked capability, but because nobody had ever built a system around them to support them, to build them up. See, that contrast is where the Lead Like a Pilot framework was born. Not from a textbook, but from the lived experience of knowing what it felt like to be inside a complete development system, having to lead without one, and watching countless others navigate that same gap, completely clueless to what is missing around them. Here's what really struck me when I started looking around after realizing this. Every serious profession has already solved this problem. I mean, think about it. We've talked about this on previous episodes. Lawyers have bar requirements, continuing education, structured apprenticeship. Doctors have residencies, boards, CME credits. Engineers, they have licensure, professional development pathways. In every case, in some form, you find the same 3 elements: structure, guidance, and community. Here's what I want you to know. Leadership is a profession too, and it deserves the same treatment. Rather, it demands it. So why do we accept anything less for the people leading our workforce? That question is what the leadership operating system is built to answer. So what does this system actually look like? Well, I want you to think about a tripod. One leg of a tripod is completely useless on its own. 2 legs, well, it might hold, but probably only under perfect conditions. Only if everything else goes right. But 3 legs, something magical happens. It's stable on almost any terrain, under any load, in any environment. That's our 3 pillars: flight school, pre-flight, and progression. One without the others is incomplete. 2 might work if you're lucky, but all 3, that's a leadership operating system. And the full potential of each pillar comes to life when integrated and complemented by the others. Training is reinforced with clear application pathways. Application is encouraged and consistent because of mentorship and accountability. Community inspires continued learning and growth. See, it's the cycle of positive reinforcement that most development programs and most organizations are missing. But here's where I think most organizations get it wrong, and why even well-intentioned efforts rarely stick. It's because they treat leader development, or just development in general, as something that exists alongside the organization. A parallel track, a separate initiative, a line item that gets resourced when there's bandwidth and quietly deprioritized when there isn't. It lives in a conference room, not on the floor. It has a launch date, and eventually, unfortunately, it has a quiet end date as well. So let's just call it what it is. It's isolated development. And isolated development doesn't compound. It doesn't become culture. It stays fragile. And the moment conditions aren't perfect, it's disregarded and fails. Why? Because isolation proves it isn't a priority. A true leadership operating system is built on a fundamentally different premise. Development isn't something that runs beside the work. No. It's embedded in how the work gets done. Not a program with a start and an end date. No, instead it's infrastructure. And like any infrastructure, it's invisible when it's working and catastrophic when it's absent. That's the shift, the mental shift I want you to leave with this episode. From isolated to embedded. From event to operating system. Here's what that actually looks like. And to illustrate it for you, I'm going to take you back into the world of aviation to show you. See, when I was growing up in the Army, I didn't sit in a classroom learning about the Army's development system or aviation's development system. No, I lived inside it. The structure created a clear path and kept pushing me forward. The guidance showed up in the form of instructor pilots and mentors who were constantly investing in me at each stage in the journey. They saw things I couldn't see about myself. They cared enough to say something. The community surrounded me with peers navigating the same journey, holding the same standard. And all of it happened as a natural, organic function of how the profession operated. Not a program running alongside my career. No, it was the heartbeat of it. See, that's the goal. Development so integrated into the operating environment that it stops feeling like development at all. Instead, it starts feeling like just how things work here. See, when that shift happens, you've stopped building a training program. Instead, you've turned your entire organization into a leadership incubator. And the leaders it produces aren't accidents. They're the natural output of an environment designed to grow them. Think about that. What would it mean for your organization to be known as a place where people become great leaders? And not just because you say so, but because everybody who works there is living proof. Let's talk about what that means for you personally. If you're the frontline leader, the person, the supervisor, the manager I'm speaking to today, you're probably handed a role and not much else. No roadmap, no real mentorship, just an expectation that you'd figure it out because you were good at the job before, because you're a hard worker, because you show promise and talent. So you've been grinding, trying to hold your team together, keep production moving, manage the pressure from above, all while quietly wondering if everybody else has it more figured out than you do. Listen, I desperately want you to hear these words. You do not need to work harder. You need a system that works with you, one that gives you a clear path forward, puts the right people in your corner, and surrounds you with the peers navigating that same terrain. It's not a luxury. It's what every professional in every serious profession already has. And it's what you deserve too. And look, if you're a senior leader listening today, I know that you didn't sign up to be the answer to every problem. I've been there. But without this system beneath you, that's exactly what you've probably become. You're overworked, overburdened, and every other aspect of your life is probably paying the price. When your frontline supervisors are developed inside a complete operating system, they stop pulling problems up the chain and start solving them at the source. Turnover slows, engagement climbs, the culture you've been trying so hard to build starts to hold. Because the people responsible for it every day are finally equipped to create it. You get to stop firefighting and you get to start building. A system, by definition, runs without you. That's the entire point. The question isn't whether your organization needs this. The question is, where do you start? So I want to give you an actionable, simple place to start. If you're a frontline leader, start with the leader's Preflight checklist. You can download it at operationlead.com/checklist. It's free. You can look at the podcast episode we recorded about it. And look, this is built for manufacturing environments. It's built to be a baseline, and it's built to help you take that first concrete step forward toward the kind of daily leadership routine that makes everything else possible. And if you're a senior leader, and today's episode brought some clarity to what's been missing in your organization, visit our website, operationlead.com, and click Learn About Our System and Process. Let's have a conversation about what's possible when you put these concepts, when you put these principles into practice. 10 episodes ago, we started with a simple question. Why do so many frontline leaders fail? Today, we close with the answer. Not just to that question, but to the one underneath it. They fail because we promote them and either leave them alone or don't put the right pieces around them. We hand them a title. We hope talent is enough. We treat leadership like it's something that should come naturally, and then wonder why it doesn't. The leadership operating system exists to change that, to build the infrastructure that every frontline leader deserves and every high-performing organization requires. This isn't a finish line. Rather, it's a foundation. It's a springboard for everything you can accomplish in your organization. Build it right, embed it deep, and it will pay dividends for the long run as you continue to run it and grow your organization. And once you have the system, development truly comes to life. Folks, I hope you're excited because we are only getting started. I'm Craig Coyle, and this is the Frontline Leadership Podcast. Let's go.